In this lesson, we'll examine some strategies to consider when tackling certain types of passages. Now, as I mentioned in the first lesson, reading comprehension passages typically fall into three categories: business, natural sciences, as well as humanities and social sciences. Now, although you should always follow the same general strategy for every passage, there are some additional points to consider when it comes to each passage type. Let's begin with business passages. These deal with topics such as marketing, economics, and human resource management. While GMAT students typically have some familiarity with these topics, it's important to note that business passages are typically accompanied by the most difficult questions. So here are some points to consider when tackling business passages. First, if you're familiar with the topic of the passage, avoid applying your personal knowledge when answering the questions. Remember that the answers must be derived from the information in the passage only. Next, it's important to note that business passages often have questions that ask about the author's tone or opinion. So as you read the passage, watch out for non-neutral words that indicate the author's feelings about the subject. You will also find that business passages often include compound words that most people are not familiar with. If you encounter these words, don't worry. They're usually easy to decipher if you examine their individual components. Okay, now let's discuss natural science passages. These deal with topics such as chemistry, biology, physics, and so on. Now, it's not uncommon for students to worry about science passages because they typically contain unfamiliar information as well as confusing scientific terminology. As a result, students often have difficulty engaging in the material. Instead, they think about how dull the topic is, or they lament about their bad luck to receive such a passage. So the first tip to consider when you encounter a science passage is to remain calm and remember to fully engage in the material. To help you do this, be sure to follow the tips we examined in an earlier lesson. Also remember that you do not need any previous knowledge about the topic. All of the information you need to answer the questions can be found in the passage. Now, science passages are often accompanied by details questions. This is good news because details questions are typically easy to answer. All you need to do is locate those details in the passage. Now, even though science passages may have more details questions, we won't deviate from our general strategy. So as you're reading a science passage, do not allow yourself to get bogged down in the details and do not try to memorize facts. Instead, focus on the big picture information such as structure and the main idea. At the same time, be sure to note where in the passage certain details occur so that you can quickly return to them if a question asks you about those details. Finally, it's useful to know that science passages are typically written in a neutral voice, so any questions regarding tone will most likely have neutral answers. Okay, the last passage type to discuss is the Humanities Social Sciences passage. Here, the passages tend to deal with topics such as literature, history, philosophy, and so on. Now to begin, these passages are sometimes persuasive, so be sure to watch out for words that indicate the author's tone. It's also common for social science passages to be accompanied by inference questions, so be sure to apply the strategies we examined for handling inference questions. Okay, that's pretty much it for strategies for humanities and social science passages. Let's summarize. In this lesson, we examined some strategies to consider when reading various passage types on the GMAT.